Welcome to Pod of Madness, a horror comedy show that proves life is mad. Case in point, my 30th birthday, which is today, and if that's not horrific or mad, I don't know what is. I know I'm a little mad, not angry mad, but kooky. I have been since I was a kid. See, I already assumed you knew me. It's an only child thing. I'm your host, Jordan Gass-Poore. I'm a podcast producer, investigative journalist, Leo, and, of course, horror fan. On this first episode of Pod of Madness, I talk with, sometimes at, Rusty Cundieff, director and co-writer of one of my favorite movies, Tales from the Hood. Without further ado, here's Rusty.
So what I wanted to just kick off the conversation with a little bit of the backstory of how Tales from the Hood, the inception, and sort of painting us a little picture of what was going on in the country at the time for those who might have been children or not born yet. Because I imagine that some of that played into, I could be wrong, but imagine that some of that played into your script.
It did. I actually have to remind myself of what it was. Hang on, let me
25 years is a long time, I know.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm trying to remember the politician's name, because one of the things that was happening, the episode with Corbin Bernsen with the dolls.
Yeah, what is it, KKK comeuppance? Isn't that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah, the idea for that came from, who was it that was running that political ad back then? I mean, it's based on a real political ad, and I just can't remember the candidate. But he had this whole thing where he was writing on a thing, and he crumpled up something because he didn't get accepted into a school or a job or something like that. I can't, because he said it was because of affirmative action.
I mean, and to me, and that was the scariest vignette, because I don't like dolls that come to life. That's actually one of the few things that really scares me to this day.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was an ad, and we pretty much mocked the entire thing in that episode, where it's like down, you see that hand come down and crumple the thing up. And that was one of the things that was going on. And of course, everything else was just kind of what it was and what it still is in an odd, weird way. You know, the police stuff and their dealings with the Black community, that was, I guess, as current then as it is now, sadly. You know, my interest in the story about the kind of child and domestic violence, that's just something that's like carried with me from my childhood. Not that there was any of that in my house, but there was a family down the street from me that I used to play with one of their kids from time to time. And I remember going over his house one day, and his younger sister, I think there were three of them, an older one, him, and then his younger sister. She caught like all the hell in the house, that she was like blamed for everything. She couldn't have been more than 8, 9 years old when I kind of remembered this moment. But I went over his house to play, and back east, everyone has basements. I don't know if you guys have them in Texas. I don't think you do have a lot of basements.
It depends, but not the same thing, because you're from Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah. So almost all houses back there have basements, and the older houses, the basements, you go down, and it's literally like a dirt floor down there. Sometimes there's, they've filled it in with some concrete, but a lot of the homes have these dirt floors. And anyhow, so we were going down into his basement, and at the top of the stairs, his younger sister was gagged and hogtied and facing a wall. And I'm like,
what?
And I was, serious. And I was probably, how old was I then? I was in grade school, which now would probably be called middle school. So maybe somewhere between 5th to 6th grade, somewhere in there, something like that. I don't know. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what, what's going on here? And he's like, oh, she did something bad. She's being punished. And I knew even then that was like insanity. And I remember talking to my father about it. And my father was a detective in the juvenile division of the Pittsburgh Police Force, but he was juvenile. And anyhow, so I tell him that I saw this and, should we do something? Should you call someone? And we were the black family that had moved into this neighborhood. A few families left after we moved in. There were a few kids that I couldn't play with. And, it was just a lesson in learning how those moments when you realize that your parents either are not perfect or they're not superheroes. They can't do everything. And so my dad's, I tell him this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, we got to do something. Go down there. Something happened. And he said, I can't mess with those white people.
Oh my gosh.
And he's probably right. He's probably right. He just felt that even with his badge and his position, he wasn't in a position to deal with that. I've always had an interest kind of in, I don't know if it was because of that moment, but child abuse, domestic violence has always kind of had some weird place in my head.
Is that why you're in that segment too?
Miss Johnson, I came to talk to you about your boy Walter because he seems to be having some problems.
Problems?
Yeah, perhaps because you just recently changed schools.
What kind of problems? I mean, all kids have problems, don't they? That's what life is. Problems. He got you good. Here, step into the light for me.
Well, he seems to come to school with a lot of bruises,
Which didn't hit me until someone sent me an article and I was like, wait, Rusty's the teacher.
I can't say that that's why I'm in the segment. Actually, I can't say that I'm in the segment because of that. I think it just turned out that way. But it is something that, just had a really big impact on me at the time for all those different reasons. The idea to actually do Tales from the Hood kind of came from, I had written a one-act play that got performed a few times out here in Los Angeles called, for the Black Horror Show, Lycanthropy, which, lycanthropy was the disease of being a werewolf, and this was the disease of being black. And it was a one-act it was a funny piece where a guy was, instead of turning into a werewolf, he was turning into a panther, but a militant Black Panther. And he was a very conservative black guy, and he was trying to deal with these issues that he had. So I had written that, and we performed that a few times. And then Darren Scott, who co-wrote with me and produced, he's a horror geek. I don't consider myself a horror geek like he's a horror geek. I like horror, and I'm geeky in different ways. So no shade on geekdom, but I just don't consider myself exactly a horror geek. I don't know. I'm just a geek of sorts. But he's it was insanely into horror and stuff like that. And I liked certain aspects of it. So he was like, we should do a horror film, and he wanted, I can't remember exactly how he was going into it. And I said, well, if I do a horror film, it has to deal with some kind of issues. I'm not really interested in doing horror just for the sake of horror.
Yeah.
That's, kind of how Tales kind of came about. It was first kind of looking at this play, and he wanted to do this horror thing, and we said, okay, write it together, but it has to be about something. It can't just be, we're scaring you. So on and so forth, which is fine. I like those movies, but for me to get invested in something, it has to. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Because to me, looking back, the movie is comedic, but for me personally, the comedy stems from just how ridiculous the issues are. It's not necessarily they're saying jokes. To me, I was laughing at oh shit, this is just so stupid. This is just it's satire. It's just ridiculous what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because some people go, it's a really funny movie. And I never look at it as it being, I mean, I know there's funny stuff in it. Corbin Burnson's section is very funny.
You. Where the fuck did your little black ass come from? Huh? You think you and some old voodoo bitch could scare me out of my house? I don't care how many slaves died here. I didn't kill them. You get no reparations. You hear me? No reparations!
But the first section with the cops and Tom Wright, who plays the politician, I don't consider that one, and he comes back as a zombie. Zombies are funny to me. But the context of what's happening, I mean, there's nothing there that's really funny. Wings Hauser, who plays one of the cops, was so good in his role that a lot of the cast really didn't like him. They said he really believes all that stuff. He's really a racist asshole. Yeah, I hate him. Like, he's an actor. If he really felt all those things, this is not the job that he would take. I don't know. No. Wings is a very nice guy, extremely concerned with social issues. And, and Corbin's character, who does bring a lot of humor to the way that role was played with the dolls and stuff. It was interesting. Years later, I ran into him, and he was thanking me he said, "Oh, I gotta thank you." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "Oh, I have this huge black following." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
That's what I would say. What?
Yeah, but the thing was, there's a lesson, of course, to be learned, which is if you're funny, people accept things or deal with things in a different way. And so they looked at that character through a different lens. I mean, I think they realized that he was the character was a racist character. He deserved what happened to him. But at the same time, he got all these fans that are like, "Oh, I love you, the thing, and blah, blah, blah." So it's like, we have a character in Tales from the Hood 3 that's pretty outrageous, and I'll be interested to see how people react to him.
Is it loosely based on Trump? I can imagine something's going to happen, right, in the third one?
We have a character that would definitely be a Trump acolyte and a Trump rah-rah. The studio was in 2 and in this one very against us making any references to Trump. In fact, I wanted to have a poster with a red tie, and they're like, "You can't have a poster with a red tie." It was kind of ridiculous in a lot of ways. I don't know if Trump has a lot of stock in NBC Universal, but perhaps.
That's interesting. Because, some of the latest Purge entries are very much like the poster of that the first Purge or whatever had the hat that was like "Make America," like it was very overtly a Trump reference. And so yeah, that's weird that a studio would be not and
I don't know if it's because I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, to me it was like a very ridiculous thing. We did have an executive that we were dealing with on the second one that was a Republican, and she got upset that one of the episodes I had a character who said that he was going to leave. It was dealing with the Emmett Till story. Yeah. Emmett Till comes back as a ghost, and the guy says he's going to leave the Republican Party, and she wanted us to take that out, and no, it's ridiculous. I mean, and by the other executive, like, "You made her cry." I'm like, she should cry. Her party is ridiculous. She should cry.
Yes.
And I don't think all Republicans are evil, by the way. But if you're still supporting Trump, you're a fucking moron.
I've had many a conversation with my family and my mother too, who is a Republican, about all of this. Yes.
Oh, I'm sure it's got to be tough.
It's interesting. I'll say that. Well, one of the things too from the original movie that I guess I shouldn't have been surprised because, like I said, I'm scared of dolls that come to life. And you said Corbin is having a Black following. That it seems like that's the story that seems to be the one people remember the most. And I remember in college we had this like hippy dippy smoke shop in my small town, college town, and they had one of the dolls sitting up from Tales from the no joke. I pointed out I was buying cigarettes and I was like, wait, is that doll from Tales from the Hood? And they're like, I have no idea. I'm like, I'm pretty certain that's the main doll from the story.
I have no idea where they would have gotten that.
I was just going to ask you, like, the merchandising. Like,
there's never been any merchandising.
Where did they get these dolls?
People ask me about these dolls all the time. Now, there was a woman who was crafting on her own. I don't think it had anything to do with Tales from the Hood. These dolls that felt very chiseled and carved, and some of those looked like they could have been Tales from the Hood dolls, but I don't believe that they were. So he might have had one of those. The actual Tales dolls, I mean, there weren't that many of them made. I have one, Darren has one, I'm sure a couple other people. The Kyoto brothers, who were the puppeteers for the dolls, I'm sure they still have one. Mine is hanging in there because they were made, to be able to kind of bend and move. Yeah. So they're rubber with armature underneath and, a little fragile. But every now and then I pull him out. He's not here. If he was in here, I'd have to go into the house and get him. But there's a few of them out there, but not a lot. Not a lot. And that doesn't mean that one did not end up somehow in a smoke shop in Texas. So
that would just be so weird. And I wonder what happened to it. That smoke shop has since closed. Like when I was in college, like it had been around since the 70s and then closed when I was in college, like my last year or two. And so I wonder what happened to it. Yeah, it looked exactly like the main doll from that segment.
Well, it could be, or maybe those dolls are just getting around. Maybe that's what's up. But yeah, no, the dolls have a lot of people remember the doll thing, and it probably is one of the more memorable episodes of the first Tales. I like it because it has my dad and mom in.
Oh, it does? Oh, nice.
Yeah. So my dad is the preacher when they're burying what's his name? His name in the movie is what?
Was it the communications director guy?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the actor's name is Robert Guinevere Smith. I'm just trying to remember the character's name. But anyhow, yeah. So my dad was at the gravesite doing the eulogy or whatever, and my mom is the voodoo woman. She's the one in the rocking chair.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Was that your decision or was that?
Oh
theirs?
yeah, no. I'm like, I'm gonna put my parents in. My dad was always trying to. He was like a ham in a weird kind of way. I didn't even understand it when I was a kid because I didn't think he was funny or hammy at all. But I was like, oh, he likes pontificating about stuff. So he showed up with he had written a sermon. I'm like, you can't say all this. All you got to do is say ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But he had 3 pages. And then, of course, when I called action, he got all nervous. And it was kind of funny. And then my mom, who's the opposite of my dad. My dad's an extrovert. My mom was an introvert, but she was great. She had no problem. She was just, she didn't have any lines, but I told her, look mad, when you were angry at me or something like that.
She was scary. I thought that was scary.
She was actually pretty scary. I was surprised, but she worked out great. And the funny thing to me, anyhow, was that she was she taught arts and crafts at this after-school program that happened, in the neighborhood that we lived in. But she taught arts and crafts to these young kids. And after the movie came out, it was for years, all the kids were kind of afraid of her. I mean, she was nice, so they knew she was nice, but at the same time, they were like, she's nice dolls after you. So she didn't have a lot of problems with any of her kids definitely after the movie came out.
I love that. And one of the other, I think, memorable scenes that we've talked about just on the phone was the scene where David Alan Grier just turns into a soup kind of monster in the other story that we had talked about, the domestic abuse. That I remember distinctly. where my mom actually was like, oh, this actually might be a movie not for children. Oh.
And did she say that when he was dying or when he was beating?
When he was dying.
When he was dying.
You know what I mean? So like, domestic abuse, cool. Children can watch that. But when he turns into, that's not cool.
Yeah, no, that's why I was asking. I was like, Americans are very okay with certain types of violence and have different issues with sexuality and paranormal things. So that makes sense, actually. But David Alan Grier was, I'd come from stand-up comedy originally. So I knew David as a comedian, but I also knew that he was a classically trained actor.
I didn't know that. I used to watch In Living Color, so that's how I know him.
Birds flying over a woman with big breasts.
And that's what most people knew him from. But he's this amazing, as you can see in the thing, an amazing actor. So when we were auditioning actors for this, we didn't audition David, by the way, I just cast him, but different people did come in and they were all too obvious. I don't know if you know who Tiny Lister is. No. If you ever saw Fridays,
yes.
He's the crazy guy. That's Tiny.
What's up, Red? Thanks for the bite. What you got on my 40, homie?
I thought you had $200.
I do. But I won't spend Red's money. I'm broke.
That wouldn't have worked.
We had people like that. I'm like, there's no doubt who this guy is. If, he comes in like that.
I'm imagining that in the scene, yeah. Oh.
Yeah, like, it's kind of an obvious thing, So David was a good choice, one, because I knew he was a good actor. He could do the role. But two, because of his history of being, a funny guy. I'm like, okay, people aren't going to see it coming quite as much. And he just did a great job.
Yeah, he was scary too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was really scary. I mean, casting him was just a really good move. He did a great job.
Clarence is a really good cast. He is very memorable to me. Talking about like the mixture of comedy and seriousness, I think that he was very, very good.
He was amazing. I had no idea what we had gotten when we cast him. I'd always liked him. You're too young to probably have watched it, but when I was young, I watched the Mod Squad, which he was on with Peggy Lipton, who ended up married to Quincy Jones at one point, and I forget the other guy, but it was, him. He was like one of the first Black TV stars that was kind of an action hero-y kind of guy, because the Mod Squad was about 3 young people who were on the bad side, that the cops get to work with them on the good side. But, they're wearing bell bottoms and he had a big afro and they have, kerchiefs. Well, he didn't have one, but the white guy had a kerchief around.
Of course.
Hey, Paul, I changed my mind.
What?
I can't give you that lift.
Oh, what is this? Be kind to Priest Suite?
No. It's just that I'd like to get to know John Banks better.
All right. Come on, let's go.
Anyhow, so I knew him really from that, and then from a few other things he had done, but mainly from that. But, he's another guy that came up in the theater in New York, just a really super professional actor and person on set. And he took this role really seriously, and he just brought so much to it. And there was a point where when we started doing this, it was right at the beginning of nonlinear editing with Avid systems and stuff like that. In fact, it was so new that the first editor we had to let go because he didn't understand the equipment. He was an old school guy and he was trying to get it. So we got somebody else who kind of knew it a little bit. So we had shot Clarence's big final, welcome to hell, motherfucker,
the horns.
that whole thing.
ain't no funeral home. It ain't the Terradome neither. Welcome to hell.
Yeah, the horns and all. We shot the horns too, but the first part where he's just like, "This ain't no funeral home. This ain't no all that stuff."
And his crazy eyes.
And
It's
the crazy
brilliant.
eyes. And we were showing it to some of the executives that came to the set, because we actually had the Avid in a room just off this warehouse that we were shooting. We had built the funeral home in, and we built Duke Metzger's Southern Mansion. We were editing just off because we were like, oh, with Avid, we can see our dailies right away. So a couple of studio executives came down to see what was going on. And so we showed them the scene, with Clarence doing his thing. And they're watching it, and they're going, oh my, oh wow, he's already morphing. When did you get the chance to make him morph? And we're like, he wasn't morphing. It was just Clarence, just acting the hell out of the scene. Sometimes you just get lucky.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. No, I think that was very lucky that Clarence was involved. Yeah, he gave me nightmares too. One of the things I thought was funny that you had said in our previous phone call, when I told you, that I saw the movie at such a young age, you were saying that, you have children, and that you didn't allow some of your children to see Tales from the Hood until they were slightly older. I really liked that story that you said. But you have, how many children do you have?
I have 3, 20, 16, and 11. Yeah, and so the 20-year-old, how old was he when he saw it? I mean, he might have been close to a teenager or a teenager. I can't even recall. And my daughter, the middle child, she was a little bit younger. And the youngest child, he saw it the youngest. He probably saw it when he was 11 now. Maybe he was 8. You're not the first person that has told me they saw Tales at like a ridiculously, in my opinion, young age. And I'm like, oh, your parents, what were they thinking? But, I kind of get it. It's weird because, when you look back at older movies, like, for example, I was going to have my kids watch, was it The Goonies? It was something like that. It might have been The Goonies. It was something like that. It was a PG movie made in the 70s, I think.
Yeah.
So PG in the 70s, they're like, fuck, dick, pussy, cunt, bad. Like
the good old days.
Ooh, yeah. And so it's like our tolerance for scatological kind of crazy stuff, even though it's weird because it's what I grew up on. But it seems like as the people who grow up on it are the people that are like, no, don't look at this. This is terrible.
Hypocrites.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, and it's so like the other day, what did I watch? I watched Booksmart again, and I'm like, okay, so this is I think Booksmart's an R. I'm like, it easily would have been a PG. So I don't know. We've gotten very precious with our children. I mean, not just in movies, but when you read child psychologists and stuff, they're always talking about how kids are so sheltered now. Yes. Where you used to just go, okay, go out and play, go out and do, and go out in the world. And now, it's play dates, and I gotta look the parents up online and see, are they decent people? It's,
I know, it's a whole thing.
My parents didn't know half of the people that I played with parents.
Yeah.
And I was at their house. And now, that said, you could also end up at the house with the kid who's gagged and hogtied, which I did. And, and there were other times where you're like, this is not a great family. You go, this is not.
I'm not coming back here.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't be here, or, so I guess there's some value to it, but we're probably very overprotective. This had nothing to do with me.
I'm curious what your kids thought of Tales from the Hood.
They liked it. I mean,
You're their dad, though, right? Like, what are they gonna say? Dad, this movie sucks.
Yeah, no. I mean, they're pretty honest with me, actually, because sometimes when I'm coming up with a story, I'll pitch them. They'll say, "What do you guys think about this?" And they're pretty. They can be frustratingly honest. If they don't like something or they think it's not working, and in fact, on Tales 2, I wish I had listened to my son, because we did the title sequence for it. It was kind of a last minute thing, and we just were like, okay, whatever, we're gonna have these digital skeletons dancing around. And he looked at it and he was like, nah. Yeah. We're like, no, we think it's cool. He's like, no. And we got a lot of flack. We got a lot of flack for that opening from different people. Like, this is shitty and blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, listen to my son. They're actually pretty honest. So yeah, they definitely like the first one and enjoy it.
What do they have to say about the third one?
Well, actually, because we got so nervous about the opening because of the reaction to the second one, there is no opening in this one. It's all tail credits, but we had a tail credit sequence done that my kids looked at and they really liked it. It's actually really good. And if I had known it was going to be that good, we'd have put it at the beginning, but it's not. It's at the end. Okay. Yeah, it's all in credits now. So now the story you just go right into the story, and we got Tony Todd in the story this time. So
oh, really? You got Tony? Okay, I love Tony.
Yeah, Tony's cool. So you'll see him.
Are we gonna be okay? Are the bad things still here?
I don't think so.
Look! Is that them? Are they the bad things?
I can't see them. The bad things, they know how to hide. They know how to make themselves look normal. Evil has a way of looking really nice and shiny on the outside, on the surface when it has to. That's why we're gonna go that way. Okay.
But yeah. So and the youngest one, he actually liked it. The oldest one, none of my kids, it's odd, none of my kids are like really, well, the older two are not so much into horror. The younger one likes scary stuff, but the older two don't like to be scared. Yeah.
And they have a dad who makes horror movies. Yes, I love that.
Well, what are you gonna
For the third movie, what is the title? Is it just Tales from the Hood 3, or what is the title right now?
What the hell did we call it? We had Tales. It was Tales from the Hood.
Like Tales from the Hood : something.
Yeah, it's like Tales from the Hood. What? I gotta look it up. I came up with it, and I can't remember. We finished editing it probably maybe a couple of months ago, and then we've been just working on. We had been working on special effects and ADR and all of that kind of stuff, and we just finished that maybe 2 weeks ago, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so all Tales from the Hood has left my brain.
I'm very similar though too, especially when you spend like months on something. Like I don't even want to talk. I don't even want to think about it. Like it's done.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, we're out of there. Done. But what did they tell me? Tales from the Hood. But I can tell you this: it'll be in Target. Is it Target or Walmart or something? What did they tell me? On October 6th.
Oh, is it just going straight to DVD?
Oh yeah. It's also going to be. It'll stream someplace, and then it's going to be on Syfy channel. I don't even involve myself in that part of it because it's just too annoying and painful. Like when they go, oh, you gotta cut this out. We're gonna take this down.
Oh, so they don't come to you, or you don't want to be involved? Like they're like, hey, they just cut whatever they need to cut.
It's like I made the movie I wanted to make over here.
So with the first Tales from the Hood, then was the film that was released, was that what you wanted to see then, or did they cut a bunch of stuff out from the original?
Pretty much what I wanted. There were stuff that we were forced to do to get our R, which I think is kind of ridiculous when I see some of the things that get R's.
Yeah.
Better. in my opinion, as worse. For example, in that movie, the scene where David Allen Greer is first beating Paula, he beats her and he whips her with a belt, goes on, the initial cut went on longer. I don't know, I can't remember how much longer, but it was painful. And they're like, well, this is going on too long. And I'm like, yeah, it really should have kept going on the way it was, because, and I remember this from one of our test screenings when it was the way I wanted it to be. We had a lot of young people in the audience, older people, but young people as well, from high school to just into college. And that episode, when David Allen Greer first starts beating her, the kids laughed.
They laughed? Okay.
Yeah. And I understand it. I mean, I can't remember if this was going on then or not. When did Schindler's List come out? But there was a whole thing for a minute about a school, I think it was in San Francisco or Oakland or something like that, that had a screening of Schindler's List. And I think there were a lot of black students, and they laughed at different things. And everybody got upset, and these students are terrible because they're laughing at Jews being killed and so on and so forth. And my take on it was a little bit different, and which is why I wanted the scene to stay long, and I'll explain it in a second. Well, I'll tell you what happened in the scene and you'll understand. So the scene plays and they laugh, it's like, oh, she get her ass whooped. That, right?
Yes.
But as it goes on, it sinks in. And similar, I think, to the Schindler List thing, is that teenagers, people in general, but especially teenagers, and particularly teens who deal with bad shit anyway, your initial reaction to bad things that are too real is to try to act like you don't care.
Yeah,
You're protecting your emotional self. You don't want to feel that pain. And by letting that beating go on, they felt the pain. You could hear it in the audience as it got quieter and quieter and just, ugh.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, blah, blah, blah. It's too much. It's like, no, that is the horror in the movie. The monsters are not the horror. This is the horror. And if you don't let people feel the horror, then it's all for naught. So I think it still works. I don't think it's as effective, and some people don't need maybe as much of that, but, it really helped solidify what was going on in that thing. And then by the end of it, and it's the first time I've ever seen it in any screening or movie anywhere. Maybe some other people have had this experience. But at the end of that segment, the audience, after David Allen Greer got twisted into the ground, they were on their feet applauding and cheering.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that in the film before. I'm sure it's happened someplace. But it was because of the reality of what he was doing, felt so honest and real. And then, kind of the comeuppance that he gets at the end. And that was something that I was actually a little concerned about, because there were a couple of women that came up to me afterwards that said that they worked for a house that took in abused women and children. I didn't know what their reaction was going to be, because I was like, well, did that story work for you? Because you can't kill your monster with a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
Yeah, it's like giving false hope, or like,
I'm like, is it just kind of too silly and too stupid? And they said, no, it is cathartic. People who have gone through this will get that out of it. They will be able to process doing this to their monster. Yep. So that was like a really cool moment for me. Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of things like the Crazy K segment. I've had, not recently, but definitely a few times, more than a few times in the past, had people come up to me and say, I was gangbanging and I stopped after I saw it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So Yeah, and so I'm a big believer that film can. It's usually not that obvious of a reaction or a response, but art, literature, movies, TV, all of it, things seep in, good and bad.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not one of those people that believe that you shouldn't know what you may be trying to say when you create something. There's other people who feel differently for any number of reasons. But I think you kind of owe it to yourself to know, at least have an idea of what you think you're putting out there. Yeah. It may be received differently, because my first film, Fear of a Black Hat, there's different responses to it. So
I'm curious who you thought the audience was going to be for Tales from the Hood, because for one, I've told people how much I like it, and they've looked at me and are like I think that they don't see me as the audience, being white and being a woman, as being the audience for Tales from the Hood. So I'm just curious who you thought was going to be.
I don't know that, quite honestly. I don't know that I put a lot of thought into it. I guessed it would just be some black folk. Probably, more or less, maybe some black people. Whoever went to see, I don't know, what was the Hughes Brothers movie? Whoever went to see that, Minister Society, they'll show up, and those people. Yeah, Boys in the Hood, that group, they'll come. Probably who I imagined it would be. I am surprised at the audience that it has seemed to have picked up. That's kind of surprising. But, what I also know is that the horror community, there's a lot of people that just come to something because they go, well, it's going to be a horror movie.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see what the fuck it is. And, But at the same time, one of the knocks that we get constantly with the Tales from the Hood movies is that are those horror fans that are either very right-wing and conservative and just pissed off that they got made, or maybe not that conservative, maybe they are, that are like, we don't need a fucking message, just scare me.
We don't need a message.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, there's plenty of horror movies for you if you just want to be scared. Why did you even come here? Because it says what it is. It's there, especially, the last one and this one coming up. It's like, it's not an unknown entity. It's, what you're going to get. So if you got a problem with it, just, stay home.
Exactly.
Stay home. But I'm curious, I know you're interviewing me, but you saw it at such a young age. I don't know that I can even ask.
I was, I think, 6 years old when I saw it ish. Yeah. It was whenever it came out on VHS at the Blockbuster. Remember those?
Yes, I do. I do remember the Blockbuster. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think, I'm pretty certain it was me that had wanted to see it. So I, from a young age, have loved, Tales from the Crypt and loved, anthology series. And I think that's what the draw was. It's another anthology series that's horror. Fantastic.
Check it out. Right.
Yeah. So Mom and I watch it. And I think what has stuck with me and why I continuously, recommend it to people and why I've seen it over the years as I've gotten older, I just see a lot of comparisons to people I know or to my family's background as well to the stories in Tales from the Hood, which I think is an interesting thing. Because I can see why somebody would look at me and be like, I don't think you're the right audience for a movie like this, or, how do you relate to some of these topics,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's, I think a lot of people can relate to these topics regardless of whatever background, gender, race.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, we definitely, like I said, have fans of the movie that sometimes you want to go, wow, okay, cool. Yeah, it's great. We're glad to have all folk.
I do remember, though, you saying on the phone that I just think this is hilarious and doesn't surprise me, that we had talked about filming. Y'all were filming where in Canada for the third movie?
Oh,
Winnipeg?
Yeah, Winnipeg.
And that you had made a comment about one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult part about filming in Canada that to me was hilarious.
Finding black people. The toughest part of filming there was finding black people to be in these scenes. Yeah, we got some really great locations, but yeah, there's not a lot of black folk in Canada, and not a lot of black Winnipegians that have an American black attitude.
Yeah.
So we found some, but I mean it's tricky because actually we ended up bringing in actors from different parts of Canada. Some of our actors came from the States, of course, but we ended up with some actors from Vancouver, Montreal, outside of Toronto. So we had brought people in from different places, but we looked at a lot of folks on tape and in person, and it was not easy to find people. Fortunately, we had no huge scenes where we needed a gang of people. So, but yeah, it wasn't easy. But the actors that we did find are really, really brought it. So
that's good.
It was some work.
And how many stories are in this one? How many episodes?
There's 4 with the wraparound.
Okay, so there's
4 with the wraparound. Yeah.
Cool.
And they're all. They're all good. I mean, I like this one overall better than 2, though. In 2, I really like the Emmett Till story. I think Emmett Till story is great. This one, I think, overall plays better. I think we learned some lessons on 2, and by that I mean the first Tales was the budget was $6 million something, which in today's dollars, and considering that we shot it non-union, one production manager I was talking to said it probably put us into $16 to $18 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And so the second one, which we shot in Louisiana, was I don't even know if it was fully $2 million. I don't even think we got that far. And so, we were trying to figure out how to readjust how the stories that we tell, because we couldn't make them as big as we wanted to. And I think we, in this one, kind of figured out how, hopefully a bit of a sweet spot. The stories, they're not as big as the first Tale, which we just can't.
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
But I do think that the stories are stronger overall than the second one. And the look of the film is better, a lot to do with the locations that we found in Winnipeg, actually. The lack of black people, but really good locations that I don't think we would have been able to find here for the price that we paid there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And did you ever find out the title of the third movie? And then I'll let you go, I swear.
Tales from the... Oh, geez.
Or you can just let me know later, just message me.
Yeah, I'm going to let you know. I swear to God, it's like it's totally left me. And part of me, I'm not sure if it's even still there, but it was like Tales from the Hood, something.
Something.
Right.
Where is it supposed to be based? The third one?
We're hoping that it feels like stories are based in different places. So I think one is going to feel like it's in Atlanta. One might feel like Chicago. One is someplace in the middle of Nebraska or Kansas. They're all kind of in different places, all shot in Winnipeg.
Go Canada. Yes.
Go Canada.
Oh my God.
The name of this damn movie. The part of it is I have to kind of see, maybe we just kept the Tales from the Hood 3. Because I don't know that they kept, let me find a script. That'll happen on
Oh.
If I can find a script in my files, if I haven't already pushed all of that off my hard drive, that happens. I'm like, I'm done with it. Get it out of here. There is a name. Hang on. So I don't know that this is going to be in the advertising, but on the script, it is Tales from the Hood 3, The Mouths of Babes and Demons.
The Mouths of Babes and Demons.
The Mouths
The
of
Mouths
Babes and Demons.
of Babes and Demons.
Mouths of
Okay.
Babes.
Right. See you later, Rusty.
All right. Bye-bye, Jordan.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks to Rusty for being on the first episode of Pod of Madness. I'll be back in 2 weeks, for better or for worse, with Alex Cuervo, the composer of the horror comedy anthology Scare Package. In lieu of birthday gifts, you can like, rate, review, share this episode on all the podcast platforms. Better yet, you can casually mention the show to your friends. Something like, I listened to this really great podcast today. I bet you've never heard of it, because they probably haven't. And in case you forgot, this show, the one that you're listening to, is called Pod of Madness. If you have a suggestion for a guest, want to put a curse on me, send a message to jordan@podofmadness.com or @podofmadness on Twitter. Thanks for listening.